Welcome back to Power and Politics. We're in conversation with the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Doris Kearns Goodwin about her new book, The Bully Pulpit, that looks at Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft in the turn-of-the-century American politics. You remember she wrote the best-selling book, Team of Rivals, about Lincoln, that Spielberg turned into a film that, of course, won the Oscar for Best Actor for the portrayal of Lincoln. But what political issues that burned then are playing out once again right now, and what can the past tell us about the future? That's why you read Doris Kearns Goodwin. Here's part 2 of our special feature interview with DKG. The fundamental issue facing these presidents was income inequality and the rising gap between the rich and the poor. And, of course, that resonates so powerfully today. This has become one of the dominating issues in the U.S. and here in Canada as well. What lessons can be learned from the way these presidents tackled the growing divide between the rich and the poor?
Well, I think part of the reason why it's become so big again today, as it was at the turn of the 20th century, is the Industrial Revolution fundamentally changed the economy. And before that, most people lived on farms. Now they're in cities. The richest person might have been a doctor in the town. Now suddenly you have these millionaires at the turn of the 20th century because of the changes in transportation, oil, and railroads. They gobble up all these companies. And there was a perception then that mobility wasn't working, and that's what the progressive era was designed to try and help. So now we've had the technological revolution in these last years. We've had the turn against government that started, so government hasn't been as active a force. But there were a quarter of a century from World War II really to the 1970s and 80s where the middle class was really strong in America. We have to figure out why. It was partly full employment in World War II. It was partly that unions were much stronger. There was a fairer tax structure at that time. Government was seen as a positive agency. And then something's broken down in these last 20, 30 years, and we are facing a very similar problem. But hopefully history can tell you we had a problem like this before. We figured out what to do about it. It's not that it's inevitable. We have to do something. So mobility, the hardest thing in a country like ours that believes that presumably you can rise from wherever you are to get to where your talents can take you, are these new studies that show that if you're born in poverty, the chances of getting out of it are not great anymore. And that really underlies the whole belief, you know, that these kinds of democracies like ours believe in.
One last question, and I got to talk to you about the split in the party, because the characters are so fascinating. Here you've got Roosevelt, this incredibly popular, robust guy, once loves Taft. Then Taft becomes president. Roosevelt decides he's going to run against him. Taft, who's this over 300 pounds, as you write, the only thing thin about him was his skin. Very sensitive guy. They both Roosevelt starts the Progressive Party, splits the Republican Party, and then, of course, in that election, Wilson, the Democrat, ends up winning. Is there a lesson about party splits? Because that sure reminded me of the Tea Party issue going on in the Republican Party right now.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, the Republican Party had been the majority party for decades, really, only losing when Grover Cleveland had won in the 1890s. And they had the strength in the House and the Senate as well as the presidency. And then once this split began between the progressives and the conservatives within the Republican Party, and once Taft and Teddy started taking out after each other, I mean, what they did on the campaign trail is impossible to imagine today. Teddy called him a fathead, a puzzlewit, you know, with the brain of a guinea pig. You know, Taft says he's going to be a dictator. If he says a third term, he'll have a fourth, he'll have a fifth. None of them, I don't think they even meant it. They were old friends, but they got caught up in that momentum of the fight. The fight was so bitter that the country said, we're going to put the Democrat in, even though Teddy and Taft had 51% of the vote.
Yeah.
So if one of them had run, they might have won. So that is the cautionary tale to the Republican Party. If they cannot contain right now in America, you know, the Tea Party split, which is pretty deep from the mainstream Republicans. Even now mainstream people are running people against the Tea Party people, hoping to get control of the party again. But the inevitable result of a split like that in history is going to be that the other side benefits from it.
Yeah, we saw that happen to Al Gore, of course.
Absolutely.
Having the popular vote.
With Ralph Nader.
With Ralph Nader, of course. So, all right, now we don't know what the movie version of this, because both Roosevelt and Taft are probably physically so unlike Daniel Day-Lewis that there's no chance he'll play it. I mean, they're huge, these
I know,
guys.
Unless Daniel Day-Lewis can gain 200 pounds,
and
then he could be Taft.
You got to recast it. What's next? What's your next opus?
Well, I am hopefully going to be part of the team that works on the movie, because Spielberg has, with DreamWorks, bought the rights to it, and it was such a great pleasure to be a part of a team. You know, when you write a book, it's solitary, but when the Lincoln movie was being made, to go down to the filming, to take Daniel Day to Springfield and show him the sights, you know, to be part of the script writing with Tony Kushner, I loved that whole sense of camaraderie. So that's partly what I'll be doing in these next couple of years. But I'm also thinking of bringing all my leaders together in one place and talking about leadership. What are the traits they shared? What do we know about human nature and leadership, even in different times with different contexts, that is the same about fundamentally what leadership is. So then I can live with Teddy and FDR and Lincoln and all my guys together for a while.
Yeah, in the fraternity of leadership. It's amazing when you read history through your eyes, how the personalities and the time, they have to match. And when that happens, history is made. It's a great pleasure to have you on the program, another real contribution, and we look forward to seeing its next form, how it appears. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Boy, I'm looking forward to reading that next book.